going on, everybody? It's your pal Spaz, Phoenix, the YWC Reality Check, and this is WWE Last Week, your weekly look back at the week that was in the WWE. Hope you guys had a good weekend. I know you guys are listening to this Monday morning. It does occur to me that while we're talking about Raw in the first portion of this podcast, if you don't listen to it on the day, then you've probably already seen the following week's Raw, but it's the best I can do right now with my recording schedule and such. And it has been a very full weekend, or has a weirdly full weekend, I will say. We're here to talk about WWE, but there were two pay-per-views over the course of the weekend, and it's funny because whenever there's a double pay-per-view weekend, it's either like Impact and AEW, or AEW and WWE, or WWE and Impact. But no, this weekend, back-to-back on the same day, though not at the same time, so not counter-programming, fuck off, it was ROH Final Battle, and it was NXT Deadline. And I gotta say, ROH is an extension of AEW now, let's be real. Put my feelings about AEW aside for a second. Tony Khan is still a weirdo, and the rest of the people running that company are assholes. But the show was alright. I got the one, you guys that heard my my Deadline preview said the only thing I really want out of this pay-per-view is for Athena to win the Women's Championship. And she did, as she should, because she's awesome. And let's just see, other than when she was in NXT, AEW and WWE both misused her, so cool to see her getting some prominence. I was hoping she was going to be the one to save the TBS championship from Jade Cargill, but we can't have nice things. The NXT show, which we're going to talk about more later on in the night, was a lot of fun. Nothing to write home about. It's still a PC Performance Center elevated episode almost version of a premium live event, but the main thing was the introduction of the what's it called the Iron Survivor Challenge. And I'm gonna say it didn't set the world on fire. I'm not expecting it to be anybody's next favorite stipulation, but I thought both the Iron Survivor matches were a lot of fun, especially the second one with the guys where they made a lot more use of the penalty box, people fighting in the penalty box, people almost taking the penalty box as a good thing because it meant they got to take a breather for 90 seconds if they were the only one in there. I thought it was an alright concept, I'm not going to lie. I think if we started, I don't know what you want to say, if you started pairing NXT shows up with WWE shows again, I think that's a really good option for a stipulation pay-per-view to put alongside Survivor Series. I thought they were a lot of fun. The people involved, I went into it looking at the women's match thinking Kiana James was going to be the weak link in that match, and she wasn't. She's not somebody that I've really had too much to say about, but she gave me something to look at in that match, and I don't mean it like that, don't be weird. And yeah, one other very specific result we're going to talk about later when we talk about SmackDown, but Isla Dawn and Isla Dawn and Alba Fire, there we go. See, I was talking about Athena, so I almost said Ember Moon, whatever. I thought that was fun too, until Isla Dawn possessed the referee and he started puking up the black viscous liquid. So I'm sure that pissed off all the right people, and yeah, one more thing we'll talk about later on. But let's talk about Raw, because while we're talking about ROH, while we're talking about NXT, we're definitely not talking about WWE. So let's talk about WWE. Let's talk about Monday Night Raw and the Usos coming in for what we thought was going to be a match with Elias and Riddle. Now, this going into it was sort of an everything and nothing type match, because we know that Elias and Riddle are a ragtag team. Elias isn't really that thrilled about teaming with Riddle because I'm much more of a solo guy, but Riddle's not quite getting it. And then as the Bloodline are coming down to the ring, we go to the parking lot to see footage of them just showing up, and it's them beating the crap out of beating the crap out of Elias because Riddle buzzed by them on a scooter. And they got really mad and started shouting, and Elias just comically comes around the corner and says, "Hey guys, what's all the yelling about?" and gets the shit kicked out of him. And he gets thrown into a pile of steel by Solo Sikoa. Solo Sikoa is so funny now because he's sort of picked up where Jey Uso left off. Jey Uso, for the longest time, because he was mad about Sami Zayn and all that, he had to be sort of like the straight man in the group, whereas Solo was his buddy and Jimmy was his buddy. Now both of the Usos are really, really cool with Sami Zayn, and now Solo Sikoa has become the serious guy, not taking over the element of being against Sami Zayn, but just being like the straight man of the group, which I think is absolutely fine. They come out, they say the match is canceled, they call out the entire division, how there's nobody to fight them, rah rah. Riddle comes out anyways, basically bashes them for taking out his partner, saying it wasn't very oozy, to which Sami Zayn responds with one of the best things I've heard ever, is like, not anybody can just walk out here and decide what's oozy. You have to have somebody like me. I'm a certified oosologist. And I don't care who your partner is. I don't care if you found anybody else. I don't care if, you're running out of friends, etc. Riddle, with the typical tee-up, hey man, well, you're gonna care who my partner is. And he comes out with Kevin Owens, and now the match is magically, for reasons, for the belts, still predictable as ever. It's the Usos versus Matt Riddle and Kevin Owens. They have a pretty damn good match. The Riddle, for the first part of it, becomes an absolute spectator as Kevin Owens takes on both of the Bloodline. Kevin Owens obviously going with this new mentality of he's completely done with his ex-friend Sami Zayn, but he's not done with dealing with the people that took his friend from him, which is a neat little story. So he takes them both on. Whenever he's legal, and then whenever Riddle's in the ring, he gets his ass handed to him quite handily. On commentary, they're driving it into the ground that the winner of this is going to face what we think is Sheamus and Drew McIntyre, but we'll get to that in a second. KO and Solo face off on the outside when Solo tries to get involved, to which my brain immediately says, yes, please give me Kevin Owens versus Solo Sikoa. I would really like to see that match. But that leads to a distraction. It's a distraction enough for them to hit the 1D on Riddle, and Usos get the obvious win. I said this last week, they didn't help themselves out at all here, drilling in the fact that there was another title shot coming up on SmackDown, because it just drilled in what we already knew, was that Riddle and whatever ragtag team was gonna challenge them was not gonna win, because there's another match already coming up, and there's no story between Riddle, Kevin Owens, and Sheamus and Drew McIntyre, is there? No, not in the slightest. Now, they are running into quite a different problem, because people like Kevin Owens, people like Matt Riddle. The problem is people also like the Bloodline, but the Bloodline at the end of the day are the heels. They are, and I know people are actually saying, oh, the Bloodline is the new NWO. Don't think that's the case, but they are running into the same problem as the NWO, in the sense that they're supposed to be heels, but they're cooler, they're better, and the audience knows they're going to win, so the audience is going to be... There's almost I don't want to say whether it's a Pavlov effect or whether it's a self-fulfilling mentality of fans, is if you see somebody you know is going to win, you kind of gravitate towards them just so you can say, ha, my guy won. Nobody went into this thinking that Riddle and Elias were going to beat the Usos. When there was a switch-up at the last minute, nobody really went into this thinking Riddle and Kevin Owens were going to win this. And by virtue of that fact, the strong, dominant faction dominating both shows is the Bloodline. And at the end of the day, they're getting the babyfaces booed or mocked. Anyways, there's a big brawl after the match. The ring clears. The ringside area clears for the most part until Solo Sikoa is left in the ring with Matt Riddle on his own. And I didn't know this. It was the something anniversary of the passing away of Umaga, who is obviously the uncle of the Usos and Solo Sikoa. Please, somebody correct me down in the box below if I've got the relationship wrong. But Solo Sikoa hits the Samoan spike on Riddle and then hip attacks him in the corner. And then... I mean, we've seen people get pulmonized before. This is not a new thing. But this is the first time I've seen it in this way. Sets him up in the corner like he's going to do another hip attack, but puts his head in the chair, in the turnbuckle. So now you've got this big, thick Samoan guy coming at you with your head trapped between the turnbuckles already, with your head also trapped in a steel chair, and they do the whole stretcher job treatment for Matt Riddle, to which people are mostly just cheering Solo, and Solo's awesome. There are people making the loaded statement out there that Solo Sikoa is the best NXT call-up ever. I mean, people forget that Seth Rollins was from NXT. Seth Rollins won Money in the Bank and cashed it in on the main event at WrestleMania. He's doing a little bit better than Solo Sikoa. Now, that being said, it became a joke. How bad was your call-up going to be? We got very protective of the characters that we liked in good, proper black and gold NXT because we knew they were going to get destroyed on the main roster. Now, since that mentality became a thing, Solo Sikoa is definitely a front runner for the best NXT call-up. But of all time, really? There are multiple. Gotta remember, as we talk about the popularity of the Bloodline, technically Roman Reigns was an NXT call-up, and they Cena'd him before they fixed him. So I don't think all of them have been bad. I'm just putting it out there. A lot of them were. A lot of them are in AEW now and doing okay, I suppose. But be that as it may, it was really cool, really dastardly sort of neck-related stuff. Okay, I'm going to fuck you up, and then I'm going to jab you in the neck with my thumb, and then I'm going to break your neck in this chair. With my ass, mind you, because Samoan stuff. We get the announcement, we get the layout for the evening, which I thought was really cool. Everybody was bitching and moaning that this wasn't advertised ahead of time. Let me tell you something, right? There's an idea out there, and it is mostly backed up by AEW. So if you agree with this mentality, genuinely, you should watch more AEW and less WWE. But there's this idea out there that unless you know going in every single thing that's going to happen on the night, that the show wasn't built properly. If you don't know every match and every face and every single person in the exact order and the exact combination that you're going to see before the show starts, that it's somehow bad. I have a theory on this. And I have to be careful about this because I'm a podcaster. This theory was created by podcasters and YouTubers. Entirely. Because a lot of podcasters and a lot of YouTubers and a lot of people who cover wrestling in general, and trust me, I do this as a hobby. I am not a journalist by any stretch of the imagination. But so many of them do preview shows. And if the company hands you the entire show on a silver platter, then you basically get your content for the day fed to you, as opposed to actually doing some speculation, doing some thinking, doing some creative work on your own part. So the idea that they have to tell you everything that's going to happen ahead of time, they have to tell you everybody that's going to be there ahead of time, they have to tell you this, that, and the next thing, they have to tell you segment 1 is going to be this, segment 2 is going to be this, segment 3 is going to be this, beforehand, or it's bad, that entire concept was created by lazy content creators. Because I'm sorry, if they walked out next week on Dynamite, let's just say, for an example, and said, hey, we got a bit of a surprise for you. The second half of this show is going to be an Iron Man match between Bryan Danielson and Kenny Omega. Nobody's going to complain that it wasn't advertised to them in advance. That is a completely false narrative that was created by people that it's meant to serve. Like, oh, I don't know. I don't even know what to expect going into this. Like, podcasters will mock WWE. I don't know what's going on tonight's show. Which means they're complaining that they don't know what to talk about on their show. That idea that you have to know everything that's going to happen on the show before it happens was created by lazy content creators. You'll notice I do a lot more conversation after the fact than preview stuff, because a pay-per-view is different. A pay-per-view they're asking you to buy. A pay-per-view or a premium live event or a special edition, whatever, they're asking you to treat that as special. And at that point, yes, they have to give you something to treat it special. If it's just the weekly show, you can decide, I like Raw, I don't like Raw. I like SmackDown, I don't like SmackDown. I like Dynamite, sure, why not? I like Rampage, I'm a person that doesn't exist. Don't get sucked into this false narrative of you need everything in advance. And because those same people will then turn around and say, oh my god, why is it so hard to shock wrestling fans these days? Because you've made it hard. It was created by lazy content creators, and I am not one of you. So when I heard about this going into the show tonight, actually I saw somebody passing it around on Twitter about 20 minutes before the show started. But they made the proper announcements and they made the proper clarifications on the night. We're going to have 3 triple threat matches on tonight's show. It's going to be Becky versus Nikki versus Alexa, and it's going to be Asuka versus Bayley versus Ripley. And the winners of those 2 matches are going to fight next week for to be the new #1 contender to try and save that belt from Bianca Belair. Oh yes, sounds like a plan. You know what else sounds like a plan? JBL's Invitational Poker Party. the more they put JBL back on TV, the more he pisses off all the right people, the more I don't mind him being on my TV. In the poker tournament, and they never really explained it as a tournament, it's just a bunch of people playing poker. That's fine. In the tournament, you got JBL, you got random dude next to him the entire night that I have to assume is some kind of dealer, or some kind of casino person, but you got JBL, Baron Corbin, Akira Tozawa, Tamina, Dana Brooke, Dominic Mysterio, Shelton Benjamin, Gable, Otis, and all the members of the OC. And then Dexter comes in with Gargano, drops the bag of money from Miz from last week because we couldn't just let that one go on the table, and sort of invites himself to join the game. And hilarity ensues. It's lame. I will admit that it's lame. I will not admit that sometimes having lame stuff on the show doesn't make it a little bit better. Now we are ready for the first triple threat match of the night, and it's Bayley versus Ripley versus Asuka. Bayley comes out with no damage control. Becky once again does a promo from the crowd, makes reference to the fact that it's been 3 years since they've had a one-on-one match. Really important thing here, gives her the credit she deserves for holding up that division during the Thunderdome era. Talks about how only 2/3 of damage control are actually successful, so they've got 2 winners and a loser. And then she gets interrupted by Ripley's music because Becky herself isn't actually in the match. So Becky heads up the ramp and Rhea Ripley comes down the ramp. So what they've done here is a very, very cool thing, and a very, very layered thing, I suppose, is there's a story that you build in the match that you want, right? There's 2 different sides of a coin, and both of them are just as valid, and we prove it in the same 10 seconds here. You present 2 stars interacting with each other that have been there a long time, that have long-standing relationships with the audience, long-standing relationships with each other. They're obviously big stars. They have a lot of history. They talk each other up, da-da-da-da-da. They get you into it to a point where it's like, okay, it's that elusive thing in women's wrestling where the company decides, hey, we can do a story over here that doesn't have anything to do with the title. They create all of that. And then as Becky Lynch is leaving, she crosses paths with Rhea Ripley, and they have a 2-second glance between the 2 of them. The crowd pops just for that, and all of a sudden we go, no, give us that instead. Which is fucking brilliant, because we're going to get, sometime in the lull before the Royal Rumble, I've said it before, I'll say it again, we are going to get Becky versus Bayley in some sort of big main event of Raw match, and it's going to be great. But going into Royal Rumble, potentially Elimination Chamber in Montreal, we are going to build towards Becky Lynch versus Rhea Ripley, and that match is going to be massive if they take it to its full potential. The story of the match is pretty goddamn simple, because you've got Ripley, you got Bayley, and you've got Asuka, who I've hardly talked about at all. Ripley monsters both of them for most of the match, to the point where Bayley and Asuka, who have been on opposite ends fighting each other for the past couple of months, have to team up against Ripley. She still monsters both of them. At one point, Rhea Ripley, I don't want to say this literally, but literally slips on a banana peel on the outside and gets taken out somewhat. Bayley comes in, takes the 5 seconds it takes to hop back in the ring, quickly hit the rose plant, and win. So, as I say, Bayley, who did, as Becky said, hold up the entire division during the COVID era, during the Thunderdome era, and who has tried to make this faction into something upon her return, is finally getting a little bit of shine, a little bit of good news for her type thing. And I'm checking my notes. I don't think Damage Control got involved in this, even though you could have gotten away with it with the fiction of wrestling and the fact that triple threat matches are no DQ by default. There was no Damage Control in here. So, Bayley grabs her win and leaves. Post-match, Rhea Ripley beats the shit out of Asuka. Rhea Ripley and Asuka obviously have history that we could revisit at some point, but already we've set... like I said, I'm going to say it again. We've got Becky versus Bayley to look forward to, and then we've got Becky versus Ripley to look forward to, and we've got Bayley going forward to face somebody next week. Now, if you've been paying attention to social media over the past week, Asuka's been posting what I assume are old pictures of her from other promotions. Her face is done up all different. She looks a bit creepy. She looks a bit pissed off and serious. Now, people are telling me, so I'm taking it on other people's word at this point, that this is Kana. This is the character that she was before she came to NXT, before she was Asuka, etc. And it's sort of a darker, more serious, more aggressive, more violent persona, for lack of a better term. If they're doing that with Asuka, cool. Absolutely cool. She's going to have to do something to differentiate herself from the trio that she was kind of put into for the past little while. Because while they were a good team, Alexa Bliss, Asuka, and Bianca Belair had to come together because they needed an opposing force for damage control as an incoming group. They need to now force that separation. Bianca Belair needs to do her own thing. Asuka needs to do her own thing. Alexa Bliss needs to do her own thing. So if there's a character change, or maybe not necessarily a heel turn, if they want to do like a Asuka snaps type of idea, I'd love to see what they do with. I'd love to see what she does with that specifically. Put the credit where it deserves, but I'd like to see what direction that goes in general. We get a bunch of announcements. Drew McIntyre will not take part in the tag team title match on SmackDown because they didn't say he was injured. They said he was medically disqualified. Now I don't know what that means. Now we know. If you go on the dirt sheets, I'm not going to give it any breath here because it's most likely SJW crap. We know the reason that Matt Riddle was written off in that cool Soulless Coast stuff at the beginning of the show. I don't know what the deal is with Drew McIntyre, whether he's actually injured, actually has a medical thing, or whether there was another reason they pulled him out for another time. And the substitution was Butch, and it's going to be Butch and Sheamus versus the Usos on SmackDown on Friday. Now, this kind of goes back to what I said last week on WWE last week, where I kind of said there's a little bit of a plot hole here where you're going for a tag team championship match and you're not teaming with somebody from your team. Like, that part of it didn't make sense to me. So this, hopefully nothing's actually up with Drew McIntyre. I don't have the knowledge on that. And also we get it announced that next week, as well as a women's #1 contenders match, we're also getting a United States #1 contenders match between Rollins and Lashley. And conveniently enough, right after that announcement, out comes Seth Rollins. He hypes up next week. Folks are singing his song. He gets interrupted by Lashley. He weirdly focuses on Lashley's loss to Lesnar. He said, are you embarrassed by your loss to Lesnar? Are you scared of Lesnar? Are you jealous of Lesnar? You know, he's basically the guy you probably think you should be. Lashley does respond, but like he mumbles his way through a promo, and I don't know whether he knows whether he's supposed to be a babyface or a heel, or whether he's supposed to come off as like the guy that's hard done by or the guy that's just got a bruised ego. It's mumble, 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 and then they go into a brawl. Now, they go to the back, and they see Austin Theory, current United States champion, watching the guys that are fighting over the chance to fight him for his championship beat each other up daily. He's having a good laugh. He says, you know, whichever one of those idiots wants to try me for my title later on, whatever. He gets cut off by Ali, who challenges him again. And here's the thing. I like Ali. I really do. When he was trying to get out of his contract, I was like, okay, I kind of get it, because they're not really using you, and when they are, it's weird. But now they are using him, and he's a great wrestler. Nobody's taken that away from him. The weird sort of thing he did about a year ago, where he was like mentoring Mansoor, but like trying to teach Mansoor how to be a heel, I don't think that was really going to go anywhere, but I liked them as a team. How do they get away with Ali thinking he still deserves a title shot? I just don't know. And Theory actually becomes kind of the de facto logical, not babyface, but like the adult in the conversation. And he says, all right, look, fuck it. You know, you want a title shot? Fine, we'll fight tonight. It's cool. I'll put my title on the line tonight. And after I beat you tonight, I don't want to hear you bitching about opportunities ever again, which is fair. Honestly, we go back to the poker game, and Luke Gallows and Chad Gable are having a nerd versus shoosh off, which is fine. Corbin's trying to read Dexter, but Dexter doesn't have any emotion in his face and keeps winning all the money. And then when they accuse him of cheating or having extra cards in his hand, he drops an axe on the table for reasons. And then at the other table, Dominic Mysterio tries to rob Tozawa. Yep, that's a thing. That is a thing that happened. Austin Theory versus Mustafa Ali for the United States Championship. It was a showcase match for Theory. Hits a pop-up into the post at one point that I thought was really cool, and then takes him from the apron side to the corner of the ring post. So if you imagine where the guardrail breaks around the ring to go upwards up the ramp, there's obviously a corner piece there. It tosses him into the corner of the post. Is a little bit more... it's got a little bit more oomph behind it than just sort of like bumping into the side of something. They did, I will say, this was a good match, but there was a point where one of them went to do like sort of a Hurricane Rana from the second rope. The other one looked like they were trying to turn it into some kind of a modified Styles Clash, and they both fell out of the move. But you know what? I'm not a wrestler, and they're both trying stuff that I wouldn't try in a million years. So you know what? They bounced back. They continued the match. Tree of Woe beat down by Theory. He gets pulled off by the ref 3 times. The match has no ending because the match is interrupted by Dolph Ziggler, who rushes the ring, attacks Theory, and Ali loses by disqualification. Now he can't fight for the championship anymore because that was what they set up earlier on in the night. So Theory, you know, sort of bumbles out to the outside, lets the two supposedly, I guess, baby faces fight, and then while they're fighting, he comes back in and takes them both out. So he wins. He wins. He's got at least 4 people fighting for his championship right now. He's got Ali trailing him. He's got Ziggler, who's been in and out trying to, like, fuck with him. And you've got Rollins and Lashley, who are beating their chests against each other for the chance to face him for that championship later on down the line. So Theory might not be your favorite person on the show, but the whole story around him is making the United States Championship look like a wanted thing. Outside the poker competition, JBL won't let The Miz into the poker game because he doesn't have any cash on him, and he won't take an IOU because after what happened with Dexter last week, JBL says Miz has a bad habit of paying debts, and then he tries to pay his way into the game with a Rolex, and JBL tells him it's fake. I like The Miz. I really do. He eats a lot of shit in every position that they put him in, and he's happy to do it, but he needs to get rewarded at some point because this ain't it. We get the announcement that it's going to be Kurt Angle's birthday celebrated on SmackDown. Oh, it's true. It's damn true. One more time, to the poker tournament, they catch Corbin cheating with extra cards up his sleeve, and that somehow turns into a challenge from the OC to take on Baron Corbin and the Alpha Academy. And that happens right now. There's not much to say about this. I'm not going to lie. It's every 6-person tag you've ever seen, and the OC are clearly the better group. Mia Yim's at ringside. JBL's on commentary. They do the shoe nerd thing again in the ring. For the most part, during this match, I'm listening to JBL telling off Kevin Patrick because it's funny. They mention flippy floppers because, yes, Braun Strowman dared to have an opinion online, and now we can't let it go. Ironically, like, for the OC looking as good as they do, Otis absolutely steamrolls AJ Styles on the outside at one point. Magic Killer gets the obvious win for the OC. It was fun. It was harmless, but it was also kind of pointless. We get a couple more announcements. Candice LeRae is going to take on Io Sky next week, which is awesome if you're somebody like me who lives in Toronto and saw them fight at TakeOver Toronto 2, I want to say. I think that was a cage match as well, although my memory could be drastically falling out of my ear at this point. During that interview about that match, Gargano and Dexter come to her and brag about the money that they won, which is nice. They have to be bringing the way back together. Like, they have to. Akira Tozawa versus Dominic Mysterio. Dominic Mysterio obviously comes out with Rhea Ripley, and Graves mentions on commentary that, hey man, there's something with Rhea and Dom. Every time they're out here for a segment, every time they're out here for a match, Twitter gets real weird. I'm just like, oh dear, oh dear. The ending of this match was great too, because Tozawa goes for a senton, misses, eats shit on the canvas. Dominic goes up for the frog splash and gets the win, and then the Judgment Day come out and they do a beatdown on Tozawa, which is like swatting a mosquito with a missile, and the save is made by the Street Profits. So now that we're taking the Judgment Day away from the OC, their next rivalry is going to be against Tozawa and the Street Profits. Okay. Our main event is Becky Lynch versus Alexa Bliss versus Nikki Cross. Nikki gets tossed to the outside early. Bliss and Lynch have a one-on-one for a while, and it's pretty good. Bliss teases Sister Abigail, which pisses off all the right people. I don't remember when this happened in the match. I don't remember the context. I just remember writing it down in big bold letters because it was hilarious. Becky Lynch, there's an exchange between her and Nikki Cross, and Becky Lynch just kicks her really hard in the tit at one point. And I'm not saying, ooh, a tit, but I'm just saying it was really funny. Twisting neckbreaker to the floor by Nikki Cross, followed by a street jacket choke. Tower of Doom suplex sees Becky Lynch powerbombing Nikki Cross, who's suplexing Alexa Bliss. Io Sky and Dakota Kai acting on behalf of their leader Bayley. They come out, they fully take out Becky Lynch and give her a double powerbomb through the table. Bliss takes advantage of the distraction, knocks out Nikki, hits her with the Twisted Bliss, and to the anger of the internet, Alexa Bliss won a match. Oh no. I love when the internet gets mad. Bayley and Alexa Bliss are going to face next week for the #1 contendership to Bianca Belair's championship. And either one of them are really good candidates for saving that belt. One of them's been trying to get it for a long time, and one of them tried to help her. And what did that do? That landed her in a 10-person, very, very dangerous cage match. But that was Raw. Moving over to SmackDown now. And wow, these are really short bullet points I've got for SmackDown. I'm just going to say that there's a whole bunch of, like, nothing really happened right now, but a bunch of bullet points that are going to be for later on. And my notes on this are really short, so the review will probably be really short, but I've got a lot of summary stuff and news bits to talk about, so we'll get to that afterwards. Sheamus and Butch versus the Usos was supposed to be Sheamus and Drew McIntyre versus the Usos, but as we talked about before, Drew was medically disqualified. I don't know. I don't know what it means. I didn't know what it meant 10 minutes ago, and I don't know what it means now. Anyways, but it means that Ridge Holland and Sami Zayn and Solo Sikoa are all at ringside. Sheamus hits a rolling senton with Butch on his back over Jimmy Uso at one point in the match. My overwhelming thought of this was another case of, and I've been saying this a lot recently, this is a really good version of a we know who's going to win this match. Butch goes crazy at some point, joining Sheamus for the 10 beats of the Bodhrán, whatever the heck it is. Sheamus stops at 10, and friggin' Butch just goes a bit crazy. Butch goes for a top rope moonsault to the floor onto both Usos. A run-in by Sami was cut off by Ridge Holland, but Solo also takes out Ridge Holland. The distraction on the outside allows for the Usos to get the 1D, which is absolutely fine. I do want to say, what I said on Raw mostly was, the highlight was Solo Sikoa being more serious, being like sort of like the assassin of the group and being the one that's more serious, and what he did to Riddle for obvious political behind-the-scenes reasons. What I took from this, and it's kind of a selfish thing on my part, because yes, Destiny Wrestling, check it off your Spaz Phoenix bucket list. I was introduced to Pete Dunne when they did the WWE UK tournament, and he eventually morphed into what became the NXT UK champion. And then him holding that title and the Destiny title, and him facing John Morrison for the Destiny title, was what first got me to go to Destiny. So I've got my fandom for Pete Dunne. It's sort of linked with an appreciation for him being in a main event was what got me to go to Destiny, and now you guys hear me talk about Destiny all the time. It's just really cool to see him in these spots, because he's not in a spot by himself, he's in a group, but they've taken everything that they did to him, making him crazy and turning him into Butch, has sort of recessed into everything but name now, and he's just being like crazy good Pete Dunne that I got to see a lot in the front row at the Don Koloff Arena, and I'm getting to see that now live on SmackDown. So selfishly, that's just a really cool thing for me. Partnering him up with Sheamus hasn't done him any harm either. I think it's really good. They gotta have something lined up for Sheamus at WrestleMania, or at least a really cool spot at the Rumble or something like that, because he's having a heck of a time right now. Ridge Holland is back up. He's the Diesel, except I don't really want to give him that much credit. I was really, really worried about him and how he was going to be treated because of the whole Big E thing. Now, people hurt people all the time, but people really like the New Day, and people like to throw other elements into that conversation that don't need to be there. So I am happy for him that he hasn't had his his career's legs cut out from under him, like, because of one bad day. Now, on the other side of the coin, obviously, Big E is awesome. Hope Big E... I want to say I hope Big E comes back, but like we don't get to decide that these people feel okay to come back or not. I just hope he's good at the end of the day. Kurt Angle shows up in the back with Gable Steveson. Oh dear, and then Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman did his best impression of like a WWE 2K cutscene character. Yes, I stole that analysis from Simon Miller because it's absolutely true. Basically, I hear you're down at the Performance Center. Maybe one day you'll be on SmackDown and you can get these hands. Wasn't good. LA Knight comes out to the ring, demands justice for Bray Wyatt's actions to him over the past couple of weeks. He says, I know I've struck a nerve with you. I think I might have even struck fear in you. And he says, I want to show some footage of what you've been doing to me the past couple of weeks. And he shows all the times where he's been assaulted and there's been somebody with a mask in the background, and then immediately tells the producers to cut off the videos because they remind him too much of a snuff film. He gets a glitchy video of Uncle Howdy, but it's really more like this Uncle Howdy character trying to, I don't know, talk Bray Wyatt into being a bad guy. I don't know. It's weird. It's strange. I like it. I want to see where it's going. They haven't done anything that makes me not want to see it, so I guess that's something. But yeah, the Bray Wyatt thing with LA Knight, the longer it goes, the more I'm sitting here saying they better have something good in mind, because I'll give it a second chance and a third chance, but there's already people out there that want it to die, so they really have to think about what they do there. Legado del Fantasma are being interviewed in the back, but the interview gets cut short by random sounds, I guess. They're in the parking lot, and by the time the cameras get to what's going on, all they see is Shotzi Blackheart lying in between two cars. At first I thought they were going to do a she got hit by a car angle, but she's holding her wrist and whatever, and then they flash forward to the present where Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler are being interviewed about, oh my god, we know it was you that attacked Shotzi. No, it wasn't us, da-da-da-da. But it's like very clearly just bad acting from the two of them, but it's almost intentional bad acting. It's the whole, what do you mean? I didn't do anything, hands up, smiling emoji. I do like this whole idea that they're collecting people's body parts. Like, they broke Natty's nose, and then they did something else to somebody else, and now they're taking... Or, sorry, no. They broke Natty's nose, they broke Raquel Rodriguez's arm, and now they've taken Shotzi's wrist, and they are stepped up to by, of all people, the new tag team of Liv Morgan and Tegan Nox. Tegan Nox making her debut last week, and I guess sort of solidifying that she and Liv Morgan are going to be a tag team. No problem with this whatsoever, but they challenge Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler to a match later on tonight. Okay. Anyways, initially the reason that they were trying to interview Legado del Fantasma is because they were going to take on the Viking Raiders tonight. So again, lots and lots of people to talk about here. Legado del Fantasma, Joaquin Wilde and Cruz del Toro are out there with Santos Escobar at ringside, with Selena Vega on commentary, and the Viking Raiders are out there with Valhalla. And yes, Twitter once again blows up with all the people that are upset that Sarah Logan has a job, and you're all very strange people. They have a few very quick exchanges before BFAB... Sorry, they have a few quick exchanges between the two of them. By the looks of it, it wasn't just going to be a straight, okay, the Viking Raiders are bigger, so they get squashed. No, Legado del Fantasma does get some technical stuff in, a few high-flying things in, and I'm talking about in the first minute of the match, before BFAB shows up on the rampway and Hit Row take out everybody in the ring with chairs, etc. BFAB and Valhalla go at it. Valhalla gets tossed into Zelina Vega, and everybody's brawling. And at this point, in my notes, in red, I'm like, okay, cool. Here's 3 tag teams that aren't going to be in the tag team title picture anytime soon, because I don't believe any of them going up against the Usos. And here's 3 ladies that are relatively new to the main roster, sort of. Vega's been in, but mostly as a manager. Sarah Logan's been in, but she's just come back. And BFAB also has just come back. So here's a triple threat tag you can throw in somewhere later on down the line. Here's a ladies triple threat tag match you can throw in later on down the line. Or if you really, really, really want to get messy, you can do a 9-person intergender tag, which would be a car crash, but I would also kind of love to see it. We go back to the back where LA Knight is now searching for Bray Wyatt. He goes into a locker room, and this is probably the cheapest thing they've ever done. They want to create a spooky element by him walking into an empty locker room that has a Bray Wyatt t-shirt hanging in it. But then the lights go out, and there's somebody standing there in the Uncle Howdy mask, and we cut to black. Because that's what we do. We just cut to black. We don't see him get owned again. We just cuts to black. It's fine. In the back, they're enjoying Kurt Angle's birthday celebration. And yes, the one thing that I wanted to see out of this whole thing, Jason Jordan comes in, hands Kurt Angle a birthday card that says #1 Dad. Love it. Absolutely love it. It'll only work for people that were watching wrestling at a certain amount of time, but it is what it is. We replay most of the match, actually, between Ricochet and Santos Escobar from last week in the finals of the SmackDown World Cup on Fox. And then we set up for the contract signing between Ricochet and Gunther. Gunther comes out with all of his boys. They start going back and forth. Neither one of them are guys that I really want to hear on the microphone, Ricochet or Gunther. Not holding it against them. They're great wrestlers. Neither one of them are that great on the mic. But the New Day come out. The New Day come out to back up Ricochet, and it's kind of weird. They're out there to back up Ricochet, but they're also out there to hype up the NXT Tag Team title match that they had at Deadline. And I will say, okay, on a total side note, I think I mentioned sometime recently the passing of Jason David Frank, former Green Ranger, former White Ranger, and I stopped watching Power Rangers after that. But I did think, for all the things that I can say positive and negative about the New Day, the nerd shit, they always get it. Them both out there in Jason David Frank inspired Power Ranger ring gear was a really cool, nice tribute thing. So I gotta tip my hat to them for that. But also, they're there to back up Ricochet, and Gunther says something along the lines of, you guys are entertainers, you guys are performers. We are not performers, we are wrestlers. And then the New Day and Ricochet getting in on it too. We're like, wait a minute, so are you saying the guys from Imperium have trouble performing? Oh my god. They had a really fun six-man tag and the Faces win, and we quickly got in and we quickly got out. We went back to, I'm sorry, I shouldn't sweep over it like that. 6 really talented guys in the ring, had a really good 6-man tag, but it's a 6-man tag. Ricochet is going into a title match next week, and the New Day were going into a title match at Deadline. Of course they were going to win, and of the 6 of them that night, the one walking out with a belt still on his shoulder was Gunther, so him losing, when it definitely wasn't him that got pinned. I think it was Ludwig Kaiser that got pinned, because it usually is Ludwig Kaiser that gets pinned. Just cut and paste, great 6-man tag that you would expect from these guys. That's all I got. Nothing bad, but just nothing to write home about either. Go back to Angle's birthday party once again, and American Alpha are upset that they're not invited. They make a big thing about how it was really hard to find a tie for Otis because he has no neck, which is fine. Alpha Academy was not invited, but the Street Profits are, so kind of thinking the bouncer might have been a little bit racist, but we'll just sort of skim over that. We go to we go to Rey Mysterio in the back in physio, stretching out his foot and whatever, and he gets approached by Cross and Scarlett, and they tell this weird story about how Scarlett used to have a horse, and when it couldn't do the job anymore, we had to put it down, rah, and it's every promo that a younger wrestler has ever cut to an older wrestler. Picture all the Old Yeller promos that Shawn Michaels did to Ric Flair. It was just a really quiet, subdued, sinister version of that. I mean, it wasn't bad. Like, when Karrion Kross and Rey Mysterio do end up having a match, probably at the Rumble or probably on some New Year's show, I don't doubt that it'll be good. I don't doubt that Rey Mysterio will go out of his way to make Karrion Kross look like $1 million, because that's what Rey Mysterio does, but at the same time, very strange. We see another training video for Lacey Evans. She's gone back to the military camp to get some training in and get herself back ready for a comeback, and all the predictable people on Twitter get angry about it, and it's fine. Liv Morgan and Tegan Nox take on Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey. Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey playing what I've written down here as evil, obnoxious heels. Liv and Morgan show in the early going that they're not going to completely get squashed. They actually show some pretty good flashes as a tag team. Raquel Rodriguez, still in her mechanical cast, storms down the ring, and that's enough of a distraction. Shining Wizard from the girl with the shiniest wizard, Tegan Nox, on Shayna Baszler, of course, not Ronda Rousey, and the faces get the win. I couldn't believe this. I was like, fucking get in. Liv Morgan and Tegan Nox get a win. Obviously, this means probably next week they're going to get destroyed. But it's still good. It's still good. It's still good. I would say, I said this last week, I'm going to say it again this week, take this duo of Liv Morgan and Tegan Nox, throw in Shotzi, and that can be your next team of 3 to take on Damage Control. That's just my selfish fantasy booking. And again, Shotzi I was introduced to at Destiny before she got her NXT contract, so I'm really pulling for her to get something at some point. Check it off your Spaz Phoenix bucket list. It's fine. We end off with the Kurt Angle birthday. He comes out in the hysterical thing is he came out in a really, really old Kurt Angle shirt, like cut off, like not quite a tank top, but like cut off like muscle shirt style type shirt. But it's really, really old, and it must have had the old WWF logo on it, because every time he turned around, it was censored on television, and that wasn't pointed out to me until afterwards. I hope I've got this right. I think it was Good Mic Work, Greg Morgan. Go check out his content too, by the way, if you haven't already. I mean, if you've somehow heard of me, but you haven't heard of Good Mic Work, then you're doing the internet backwards. But it was just, yeah, I thought it was really strange, because you remember, for the longest time, if you were watching old WWE content, in the new old WWF content in the new WWE, everything was censored. The logo on the referee's shirt had to be fuzzed out. The turnbuckles all had to be fuzzed out. Sometimes the logos on the rampway had to be fuzzed out, and it was like watching a TV that was out of focus almost, how bad they got with these edits. But it was, because we haven't seen it in so long, it really stuck out like a sore thumb. Thanks everybody for their birthday wishes. They were in Pittsburgh. It was his hometown and whatever. And the Alpha Academy butts in, and Gable's entertaining. Gable is a really entertaining promo guy, but this just dragged on a little bit. He says, you know, you need to share a ring with me, you need to share a ring with a real Olympic hero, you've lost the 3 eyes, and Otis is going to eat your cake. And Kurt Angle just looks at him, and he sort of shambles up the rampway while they're eating the cake, and Otis has the tie, but it's like taped to the front of his throat because he's got a vest on but no shirt, and it's very strange. And he just leaves, and he's gonna let these guys eat his cake, and then he gets up to the top of the rampway, and he says, if you're gonna eat all that cake, you're gonna need some milk. And out drives Gable Steveson with the milk truck. And I thought, oh, at first I was like, where's the hose? He's going to do the whole hose bit. And then they just brought out this crate that had a couple of individual bottles of milk in it. They started chucking the bottles. And for a second I thought, oh, this is supposed to be a callback to that, and this is really lame. They're just chucking bottles at them. And then he got out the hose. Weird thing is Gable Steveson standing beside him like he's got a hose as well, but he's like miming it and going crazy. It was good for what it was. Chad Gable and Otis are good fall guys for stuff like this. People have always associated Chad Gable with Kurt Angle, so pairing them up in this was a no-brainer. Otis is always good comedy value, because I'm sure even as they were getting sprayed with the hose, he was still eating the cake. I don't know what this means for Gable Steveson. Multiple things that I saw online were marking this as Gable Stevenson's SmackDown debut. This wasn't a debut, man. Like this, it just wasn't. It was fun, and like a lot of stuff on this show, it served functions for later on. Like I do want to see what Gable Steveson can do in the ring. We haven't seen any of that yet, but a lot of this was like, oh, this will be good later. This will be good later. This will be good later. But if you ask me what was good on the night, I'm gonna say like the opening match, and maybe the babyface surprise with Liv Morgan and Tegan Nox, and everything else was building blocks, which is fine. And I say it's fine, and I'm being a lot more forgiving, because next week, for Raw and SmackDown, is loaded. What do we have on Monday Night Raw? We've got Candice LeRae versus Io Sky, which, like I said, is a TakeOver Toronto rematch, so I'm a little bit biased. We've got Rollins versus Lashley for the U.S. #1 contendership. We've got Bayley versus Alexa Bliss for the women's #1 contendership. We've got Roman Reigns returning to SmackDown. We've got Ricochet versus Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship on SmackDown. We've got... Liv Morgan and Tegan Nox got granted a title match, so Liv Morgan and Tegan Nox are taking on Damage Control next week on SmackDown, and we are getting the Viking Raiders versus Legado del Fantasma versus Hit Row in a triple threat tag team match. Again, I'm hoping that leads us to Zelina Vega versus BFAB versus Valhalla at some point, but it is what it is. Other bits of news that we point... Oh, I should say, before we go, because I kind of skimmed over the New Day thing, the New Day did, in fact, win the NXT Tag Team Championships on Saturday. I am so morbidly curious as to how this is going to go from here. The New Day... I almost want to say that they would have been better going back to NXT when it was NXT 2.0, because that would have been ridiculous. But I'm thinking about the tag teams in NXT. I was thinking, like, New Day versus Indus Sher, New Day versus the Creed Brothers, New Day having a rematch with Pretty Deadly, who did pretty damn well in their own right. They tried to do the Eddie spot with the belt, and all 4 of them fell down. That got me. That popped me. I'm not gonna lie. But I don't know. If they hadn't fucked over MSK, then you could have had New Day versus MSK. You could have New Day versus Josh Briggs and Brooks Jensen. Could be a lot of fun. Team somebody up with Von Wagner and just do that. It'll be fine. Eder Sanofi and Malik Blade would have an amazing match with the New Day. I will say, for my sins, for my like of everything weird, I really want to see the New Day interact with the Schism, because that'll be a lot of fun too. But New Day, that was the last thing that I meant to insert that part in when I talked about the New Day and Ricochet, but that didn't quite happen because I can't format for shit. New Day winning the NXT tag titles was that thing that I mentioned in the preview that's like, it's not going to happen, but think about all the cool things they could do if they did. And then they did. So, let's go. But other news. Cena is coming back to SmackDown on December 30th. NXT is doing Vengeance Day. If you did tune into my deadline preview, you would know that pretty much all of my predictions were based on, hey, they're going to do this, unless they're doing New Year's Evil. Then they'll do this at New Year's Evil. What I meant to say is Vengeance Day, February 4th, is going to be the first show in a while since Stand and Deliver that NXT is actually going out back on the road. They're going to, I can't remember the name of the arena, but they're going to some arena in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they're going to do like a proper show outside of the Performance Center, which is fucking awesome. And I think it's kind of cool that they waited until they were out of the completely rainbows and butterfly farts version of NXT into this sort of like halfway house that they've got now between what was and what is and what will be and all that kind of thing. And I do want to say one more time about Deadline, the Iron Survivor challenges were a lot of fun. I hope that wasn't a one-off. But looking forward, what did we sort of establish this week? We're building both of the titles on Raw, and I say the Raw titles because the world title basically lives on SmackDown, let's be real. But we've established that Bobby Lashley, Seth Rollins, Mustafa Ali, and Dolph Ziggler all won a piece of Theory in the United States Championship. You had Ripley, Asuka, Bayley, Nikki, Alexa Bliss, and Becky all fighting for a chance to go after Belair's championship, which needs to be saved at some point, as we know. We've continued the story with Kevin Owens versus the Bloodline. He teamed with Riddle for one night. Riddle has now been taken out by SJWs. I mean a neck-breaking incident with Solo Sikoa. It's fine. On SmackDown, I want to be careful how I say this, right? The SmackDown tag division is trying. They're trying. They're trying to establish this three-way feud with Legado and Hit Row and the Viking Raiders, which could be something. It's not a title concern, but it is something, and if you get these three guys to be the three guys that bounce off of each other and then can eventually bring other people into the mix, then cool. You've still got Maximum Male Models rattling around somewhere, but I'm really thinking that we're going to bring up Pretty Deadly, and then Pretty Deadly versus the Maximum Male Models is going to be hilarious. The Wyatt Knight thing continues. The more they drag it out, the more I really hope it's good. I'm acknowledging the fact that it might not be good, but it could be good. Like I said, based on social media, etc., we are potentially getting this newer, darker version of Asuka, or whatever she was in Japan back in the day. I'm not familiar, so it'll be a brand new thing for me. When Finn Balor came to NXT, and people were telling me about Prince Devitt, and wait till you see this demon thing, and then we saw the demon Finn Balor for the first time in NXT. That was huge, and it was exciting for people that knew what was coming, but it was exciting in a different way for me, because I'd never seen it before. It was a brand new thing, and the way he sort of like soaked himself into that character for the very first time when I saw it was special, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that this will necessarily be that, but if it is, then I want to see it with like brand new eyes, if that makes sense. The way we are potentially or perpetually building two different things for Becky right now is this like a now feud and a later feud. Like a now feud with Bayley that's going to get us over the Christmas break, the holiday break, get us up over the hump until Royal Rumble, and somewhere later on down the line we are going to have a showdown between Becky Lynch and Rhea Ripley. That's fantastic, because potentially neither one of those matches or feuds or whatever they become would directly be for the title, except like if Bayley wins next week and then Bayley beats Rhea Ripley, or sorry, if Bayley wins, I messed myself up now. If Bayley wins tonight on Raw, because you guys are listening to this on a Monday, if Bayley wins tonight and becomes the #1 contender and goes on to beat Bianca Belair before Becky gets her hands on Bayley, Becky could potentially grab that title off of Bayley and then set her sights towards Rhea Ripley using her newly won championship as bait, and Becky Lynch versus Rhea Ripley for the Raw Women's Championship would just be fucking fantastic. I know people want Becky to go to SmackDown to face Ronda Rousey, but that other girl that we're not supposed to talk about, who's supposed to be coming back soon, who's not allowed to succeed because she's white and blonde and you don't like who her dad is, she could always face Ronda Rousey and have a fucking amazing match with her on SmackDown. So yeah, build towards a WrestleMania. Build towards a WrestleMania that gives me Charlotte versus Ronda and Becky versus Rhea Ripley. Becky versus Rhea Ripley should main event one of those nights if that's the case. Just saying. I know The Rock and Cody and Sami Zayn and CM Punk are all going to come for Roman Reigns, and they want Roman Reigns to do 3 or 4 main events in the weekend and all that crazy shit. I'm sorry. If you build it properly and you make it for a title, Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch should main event one of the WrestleMania nights, because that WrestleMania Women's Championship main event will have actually earned its main event status. Oh yes. Anyways, now that I've pissed off all the right people, just like WWE pisses off all the right people, this is why I have this symbiotic relationship with the WWE, because we piss off the right people together. I've been Spaz, your YWC Reality Check. Subscribe up there, talk down there, start a conversation, keep all these conversations going. Don't be a stranger. I will talk to each and every last one of you later, but for right now, I am tagging out. Bye, guys.